I was born in Canton, China, moved to Hong Kong at a very young age, and immigrated to the United States at the age of 9 years old. And I could tell you a little story. Growing up in Hong Kong, the word for America in Chinese is Gum San. Gum is go and San is mountain. So the literal translation of America is Go Mountain. So when I was growing up in Hong Kong, I always thought that the landscape of America was made up of all these little gold mountains. So when I finally got a chance to come to the United States, when I arrived at the airport, I was anxious to see all these little gold mountains. On the way into the city in a taxi cab, I was peering out of the window from the back, looking for all these gold mountains. I saw no gold, but I saw a lot of crack and broken sidewalks, buildings with graffiti. I later learned that the Gold Mountain was a metaphor, and that the term Gold Mountain or Gum San stood for the vast opportunities in this country, and that if one works hard and perseveres, there's nothing that one cannot achieve or accomplish. When I got to this country, I remember how hard it was to learn the English language and to get adjusted to life in this country. Transition was very hard. Initially, we lived in South Bronx, and then later we moved to the Lower East Side of Manhattan, very tough neighborhoods. And I remember, because I didn't speak the language and I was very weak, undernourished, I used to get picked on a lot in school. A lot of times I fought back, but most of the time I was on the losing side. I remember one day coming home with a shiner, and my mother boiled an egg, took the shell off, and began to rub the egg over my eye. I asked her, how is that going to help? And she tells me that the boiled egg would take the bruising out of my eye. After about 10-15 minutes of doing that, she opened up the egg to show me the yolk was this color. I had my doubts whether it worked back then. I still have my doubts now. So, you know, my father did not think I was going to survive in the neighborhood. He had a concern. He took me down to Chinatown one day to have his friend teach me Chinese martial art, or Kung Fu. The master taught me the martial arts for a few years, and I trained religiously under this master. And I actually turned my body, my physical condition around. Became very athletic, very strong. One day, a friend of mine asked me whether I was interested in signing up for a boxing match in the boys' club. I never competed before, so I said, let me sign up for it. And I actually destroyed my opponents in the tournament. And I was immediately drafted to the boxing team of the boys' club. Thereafter, I signed up for the New York City Golden Gloves Boxing Championship, which is the largest boxing tournament in New York City. I had some tough fights, but I went on to win the New York City Golden Gloves Boxing Championship, first Asian to win that honor. And thereafter, I was invited to box in the Nationals, representing New York City. And the Nationals is for the championship of the entire United States. And I fought the eventual champ. I lost on a very close decision, and I blamed the loss on my coach, who gave me bad advice, I think, going into the last round. Coming back from the Nationals, one thing was for sure: no one picked on me, ever, in school or anywhere else. And when I also came back, there was a movie company from Hong Kong, Golden Harvest, who offered me a movie contract to do a martial arts film in Hong Kong. I thought it over, and I chose law over acting. Thereafter, I graduated from Brooklyn Law School, came out with a degree, and I wanted to start my own practice in Chinatown and to help my father, who was the mayor of Chinatown at the time, with his community work. I took a slight detour, and I thought that maybe it's wise to get some experience first before starting my own practice. I got a job as a law clerk in the civil court of the city of New York. I learned that I enjoyed the work immensely, working for judges. And when a posting came out for a housing court judge, I applied for it immediately. When I was a youngster growing up in the United States, I used to love the show Perry Mason. That really got me interested in, the whole courthouse atmosphere with trials, with the attorney trying to prove his case. It was very interesting entertainment. And when I grew older, I learned that the law touches pretty much on everything that we do in life. And I got more and more interested in the law. And I saw my father was very active in the community with the community work. And I pretty much worked with him in many of the projects he had in Chinatown. And every project that we did, the law was always involved. And that's how I got interested in law and my desires to enter law school. I saw that he was a defender of people, innocent people, and how he could help society by bringing out the truth in a trial, and bringing out the innocence of the people that he defended. I worked extremely hard in the housing court. I recall going in the housing court during the weekends and worked the entire day drafting decisions, because from Monday to Friday, the court was so busy that you didn't have much time to do anything else other than conference and try cases. So the only time that I had for drafting decision was over the weekend. And many weekends I worked until midnight, because that's when the court closed. I would get a call from the custodian about 11:45 to tell me that it's time to leave. We're shutting down the lights and everything. During my tenure as housing court judge, I received a phone call one day from the Democratic County Leader's office. I was told that if I ran for civil court, the county leader will endorse me. And I was kind of surprised, because I was never involved in politics, never met the county leader. And I told the person that, let me think about it, and I'll call you back, later on. So I did a little investigation. It turned out that there was an Asian woman who ran against the county candidate the year before. And she lost the election in a very close election. So the following year, that year, she wanted to run again. And she was complaining about the county leader, that he always advocates diversity in the court system, but he refuses to endorse her, an Asian candidate running for civil court. And I assumed that the Democratic County Committee did not want potential criticism. So they probably said, let's find another Asian to endorse. And I was the only Asian in the civil court at that time, and I had a very good reputation as a housing court judge. And that's the reason why I think I got the endorsement. And a lot of people, friends and colleagues, told me not to do it, not to run, because it would cost tremendous amount of money to run a civil court race countywide, and at the end, I will lose. He says, don't even think of it. Well, I thought it over, and I concluded that if I didn't take advantage of this opportunity, it may never come again. So I threw my hat into the ring, raised a lot of money in Chinatown, hired a campaign manager. At that time, I had a terrific reputation as a housing court judge, and I was going to run on my judicial record in the housing court. I had many decisions published in the New York Law Journal, and a lot of those decisions dealt with some of the serious problems facing the city at that time. There was one case in particular which was very useful to my campaign. The case is in the matter of Kellner. In that case, I utilized a 100-year-old boarding house prostitution statute for the first time. The statute has been in the books over 100 years to evict drug dealers from residential premises. The statute is RPAPL section 715. It provides that if you live within 200 feet from premises used for prostitution. The statute was enacted back in the late 1800s to combat the problem of prostitution facing the city at that time. So if you live within 200 feet from premises used for prostitution, and you give notice to the landlord that there's a problem in the building, prostitution is going on, and if the landlord does not do anything for 5 days, you as a resident who live within 200 feet can come into court and bring an action to have the tenants or the violators evicted. So the statute was enacted back in the late 1800s. In 1947, they expanded the statute. And no longer, the statute is limited to prostitution, but it added for any other illegal trade, business, or manufacture. So the statute was expanded in 1947. Nobody took notice of, the revision until 1985, when I was in a housing court. We had this case in the Manhattan Valley of, the west side of Manhattan. A property owner died intestate. She didn't have any relatives, there was no heir, and a public administrator had to be appointed for the estate. No one took care of the building, and drug dealers went into this building, turned it into a drug supermarket, and really affected the entire neighborhood. There were people coming in the middle of the night, knocking on doors, looking for this infamous drug market. There was a shooting in the neighborhood. Prostitutes came in. It was just deteriorating the entire neighborhood. So the residents who live in the area brought this action before me using this law, Section 715. And I went through the law carefully and conducted a trial. A lot of the residents came in. They testified. They saw lines of people waiting to get into this building. And coming out shortly thereafter, the police raided the building, found drugs, drug paraphernalia, scales, and needles, and everything they found in this building. After the trial, I concluded that drugs were being sold en masse in this building. And I researched the law. Selling drugs is an illegal trade, business, or manufacture. I found that there was a violation of the RPAPL 715, evicted all the people from the premises, padlocked the building, and returned the neighborhood back to the residents. When I was running for civil court, I was told by many people not to do it. I decided to throw my head into the ring and join the race. I ran on my record. We ran a terrific campaign. I don't think I could have done more if I had to do it over. It was a very busy summer for me. I campaigned before I went to work. I campaigned after work. I campaigned over the weekends. I visited all the nursing homes in Manhattan. At that time, I believe there were approximately about 50 to 60 nursing homes. We did tremendous amount of campaigning. There was a brochure that we did. It was done so well, a campaign brochure that won first prize in a campaign contest. In the brochure, on one page, we had all my famous decisions. On another page, there was a picture of me knocking out someone in the ring during my boxing career. And after a hard-fought battle, I think that we got the message across to the voters that I was a hard-working judge with innovative solution to many of the problems in the city of New York. To the shock and dismay of all the politicians, I won the election. And I was one of the first Asians to win a countywide contested election. We had a huge celebration in Chinatown. Over 1,000 people came to that celebration. Three years thereafter, I decided to put my papers in for Supreme Court. And I asked the Democratic county leader for his support. He told me that he could not support me because there are many other candidates ahead of me. So I decided to put my papers in anyway. I didn't have much confidence in winning the Supreme Court because back then there was no organization. We didn't have the Asian American Bar Association back then to support me. All the other candidates running for Supreme Court, I had bar associations or organizations supporting them. I still remember the interview before the Independent Judicial Committee was held in a big law firm. I was brought into this big conference room. There was no conference table in this room. There was only a seat in the middle of the room for me to sit on, and the committee members sat around the perimeter of the room. And as soon as I sat down, I was hit with questions left and right from the committee members. I thought I did pretty well in that interview, but I still didn't have much confidence of winning the nomination. However, when the list came out, I was surprised. I was the only minority on the list. There was no African American, there was no Hispanic. There was only one Asian that came out, which means the county leader had to endorse me. The first Asian to come out of the Judicial Independent Committee, he had to support me. So with the support of the county leader, I was nominated in the Judicial Convention to run for Supreme Court, and thereafter I was elected to Supreme Court, first Asian to be elected to Supreme Court in New York County. And 3 years thereafter, I decided to put in my name for the first department, Appellate Division, and I was appointed by Governor Mario Cuomo. And I've been in the Appellate Division ever since. I became the Acting Presiding Justice in 2007, 2009, and presently I'm the Acting Presiding Justice. I think that one day the women is going to take over the legal profession one day, because we do the admissions in the Appellate Division. We do many classes during the course of the year. And every class I look out to see, the makeup of the class that's being admitted. And for the last 10, 15 years, I've noticed women candidates outnumber the men, and the Asian women pretty much outnumber all the minority groups. I think it's a great thing to see. You know, maybe one day the men will be doing housework and the women will be running all these big law firms. Looking back at my life and my experiences in this country, you know, together with the hardships and the challenges, I came to realize the true meaning of the term Gamsan, or Gold Mountain. And I am indeed living the American dream. This success story could only happen in America.